The lights dimmed, and a hush swept through the crowd like a wave of expectation. A single spotlight carved its way across the stage, stopping on a boy, barefoot, nervous, holding a weathered guitar that looked almost too fragile to play. His clothes were worn, his face pale under the lights, but his eyes, they carried the kind of depth that only hardship could carve. The judges exchanged puzzled glances, whispering quietly. One of them leaned forward and asked softly, "What's your name, son?" The boy's lips trembled as he answered, "Eli." The microphone caught the faint quiver in his voice. A pause followed, a long, uncomfortable silence. Then Eli took a deep breath and began to play the opening notes of Hotel California. But this wasn't the song people knew. It was slower, gentler, as if each chord was being pulled from the deepest corners of his heart. His voice cracked in the first verse, not from nerves but from emotion. Every lyric came out like a prayer whispered through tears. Behind his trembling voice lived a story untold. Nights spent singing on cold streets, his mother humming lullabies beside a flickering candle, his father's old letter that said, "Music won't feed you, son, but it might feed souls." The audience began to lean in, their eyes glistening as they felt every ounce of longing woven into each word. By the final chorus, Eli's voice broke completely, then faded into silence. For a moment, no one moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. The judges' pens dropped. One covered her face, quietly sobbing. And in that sacred stillness, everyone understood. They hadn't just heard a song. They had witnessed a story of pain, love, and hope reborn through a single trembling voice. Backstage, Eli sat on a narrow bench, his guitar resting across his knees like an old friend that had seen too much. The air buzzed with the distant cheers of other performers, but inside him, there was only quiet. His hands still trembled, not from fear, but from release, as if every note he had sung had carried a piece of his soul into the crowd. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded, wrinkled piece of paper. It was torn at the edges, the ink fading, but the words were still clear. "Play this song one day for her. She'll hear you." It was his father's handwriting. His father had written that letter on the night before his last performance, before the accident that took him away. Eli had found it years later, hidden in the old guitar case. Since then, every note he played was a conversation with the man who taught him that music isn't for fame, it's for remembrance. During rehearsals, people had laughed at his choice. "That song's too old, too slow. You'll lose them before the chorus," they'd said. But Eli wasn't playing to win them over. He was playing to speak, to reach someone who existed only in memory now. And tonight, as the final echo of his performance still hung in the air, a crew member passed by and whispered, "They're still crying out there, kid. You broke them." Eli smiled faintly, tears welling as he looked toward the glowing stage lights through the curtain. "Then maybe," he whispered, voice trembling with hope, "he finally heard me." The camera lingered on his face, a reflection of grief softening into peace, of a son who had finally sung his father's promise into eternity. Moments later, the host's voice echoed across the stage, calling Eli back under the blinding lights. The audience erupted in cheers that shook the walls. His hands trembled as he stepped forward, the guitar still hanging from his shoulder. He had no idea what to expect, praise, pity, or silence. But what he saw next took his breath away. The oldest judge, known for her sharp words and colder heart, stood up slowly. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking as she clutched the microphone. "Eli," she began, her voice breaking on his name, "that song, I used to sing it with my brother before he passed away. I haven't been able to listen to it since. But tonight," she stopped, tears spilling freely now, "tonight, I felt like he was right here beside me again. Thank you." The entire room went silent, as if afraid to interrupt the moment. The other judges nodded, visibly moved. One of them whispered, "Music like that doesn't come from talent, it comes from love." Eli stood frozen, overwhelmed. He hadn't meant to make anyone cry, he had only wanted to honor the man who once believed in him. Slowly, the crowd began to chant his name. The host turned to the judges' panel, her voice trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we all agree this deserves something special." She raised her hand, hovering over the golden buzzer. Then, with one powerful press, it lit up in gold. Confetti burst like sunlight, raining over the stage. The crowd screamed, the judges stood, and Eli fell to his knees, staring upward, tears streaming down his cheeks. In that golden storm, he whispered through trembling lips, "We did it, Dad." And for the first time in years, his heart felt whole. After the show ended, while cameras flashed and reporters rushed to get a word, Eli quietly slipped through the back door. The cold night air wrapped around him, still glittering faintly with gold confetti that clung to his jacket. Fame wasn't what he came for, he had already won the moment he sang his father's song. He walked for miles until he reached the small park where his journey had begun. The same cracked bench, the same dim streetlight flickering above, and the same echo of dreams whispered through the wind. As he sat down, softly plucking at his guitar, he noticed a little boy standing nearby, barefoot, holding a plastic toy guitar with a few broken strings. Eli smiled gently. "Hey, you like music?" he asked. The boy nodded shyly. "But my mom says lessons cost too much." Eli looked down at the instrument in his lap, the one that had carried his father's legacy, the one that had given him everything. Slowly, he placed it beside the boy. "Then start with this," he said. "It's old, but it still sings." The child's eyes widened in disbelief. "But, it's yours." Eli smiled through a soft tear. "Maybe it was just waiting for you." Moments later, the boy's mother hurried over. Recognition flashed in her eyes. "You're that singer from TV," she whispered. Eli shook his head modestly. "Just someone who was helped once." The woman's eyes glistened. "Then thank you, for helping again." As Eli walked away, the faint strumming of Hotel California drifted behind him, this time from the little boy's hands. The night air carried the sound upward, and for a moment, the world felt softer, warmer, like kindness itself had learned to sing again. Months passed, and though Eli didn't win the trophy, his story traveled farther than any song could. His performance went viral across the world, millions wept, millions shared. Donations poured in from strangers who said his music reminded them of someone they'd lost, someone they still loved. With that money, Eli started a small foundation in his father's name, the Hotel of Hope, a place where poor children could learn music for free. It wasn't built of marble or fame, but of purpose. The opening night was simple yet beautiful, strings of golden lights hanging above smiling faces, laughter echoing like a hymn of new beginnings. The same judge who once cried stood at the podium. Her voice shook as she said, "Eli reminded us that music doesn't just fill rooms, it fills hearts." He turned pain into purpose, and loss into love. The audience applauded, tears shining in the glow of the lights. Eli stepped forward, his voice calm but thick with emotion. "My father taught me that songs never really end," he said softly, "they just find new singers." He looked into the crowd, and froze. There, in the front row, sat the little boy from the park, holding Eli's old guitar. The moment their eyes met, the boy began to strum Hotel California, his small fingers trembling but sure. The melody floated through the room, fragile and pure, and Eli's tears fell freely. "Guess the song found its way home," he whispered. The lights dimmed as the music lingered in the air, two souls connected by kindness, legacy, and love. As the screen faded to black, golden text appeared, "Kindness is the music the world never forgets." And in that closing silence, hearts everywhere remembered what it meant to truly feel.